about this and try to figure out what's going on. Why are we all so scared? There's another phenomena that's all over the Western world, and it's called terrorism.
Right.
And what I find interesting about this is ISIS and Al-Qaeda, we consider them terrorists. They don't want to scare us. They don't really want to just change our way of lives. They want to kill us.
Right.
So that's a misnomer of a term at this point in history. But then we have these crazy clowns running around, and really all we can tell, their aim is just to terrorize people. So if I call them terrorists, it's being true to what that word means.
Sure.
It's not necessarily true to the popular usage of it.
No, you're absolutely correct.
So this is happening all over the place. You know, it's even happened in my small town where people claim it, but what makes this so difficult is there's so many bogus reports and sightings.
Right.
It's mass hysteria like we've really never seen before. It reminds me historically of the UFO craze in the late 40s, early 50s. And people that look at that think about the larger picture, which was we were afraid of aerial attack by the Soviet Union. So I have to wonder, is part of why people are so scared about this because of terrorism, and we no longer feel safe anywhere. We've had the terrorist attacks in the U.S. over the summer, certainly in Europe as well. So is this somehow psychologically related to that phenomena?
Well, Steve, you've gone down an interesting avenue. So let me pose one comment/question to you. So we live in an age, you talked about the UFO sightings and what they may have been an outgrowth of, with our Cold War really starting to heat up pretty good at that. That was the start point.
Yep.
But everybody didn't have, and I made this comment about a month back, and then it started to slowly change. Everybody's walking around with a cell phone, and almost every cell phone has some kind of picture take capability. And we really weren't seeing many pictures. Now the pictures that you do see seem very staged, the vast majority. And, of course, there's been a number of false claims that have come out that a lot of people have just jumped right on the bandwagon and said, okay, we're going to get this, people are going to be arrested. And there have been most of the arrests that there have been folks that were using this phenomenon as a means to put a prank or terror type call in, right, not with the same ultimate goal going on. Where's all the footage? Where's all the uploaded stuff? Now it's starting to pick up, but there's a lot of evidence, and now you have the inevitable as we approach Halloween, the banning of clown costumes on people over the age of 16. I think that came out in Connecticut, a town or a county in Connecticut. And they're putting the word out. If you don't scare people, don't play this routine up, or you're going to be arrested. Your thoughts?
My thoughts on this are as complicated as the point about terrorism versus not terrorism is. People were scared of clowns before this happened because we had culture take things in the interest of horror movies. And if you want to scare somebody, this innocence and you twist it. And so long before this happened, there was Poltergeist and It and these horror movies with clowns. But you have here a phenomena where there's not a lot of physical evidence. I have seen a video, although it may be spoofed, of 4 young people getting out of a car and beating a clown with a baseball bat, but that may just be a pal. But you're right, there's not a lot of photographic or visual evidence of this, and people are hysterical. And so you have what's happening to the terrorized, but then who also are these people that are doing the terrorizing? There are and some power and yeah. So
all right, well, now, Steve, I'm gonna slide us a little bit along.
Sure.
We talked a little bit a while back. In fact, we've often talked that maybe we should try to do a remote show from it. Let's tease it going into our next section a little bit as we head towards the first break, about your friend that's the guide who doesn't like to go into a certain part of the woods pretty close to where you live.
Yeah, it's called the Bennington Triangle. It's in southern Vermont. It's a series of 3 mountains. Beautiful country, especially at this time of year. I've got a friend who has spent a lot of time in the woods to try to figure out what the story is behind this. And it's a long story. And it
Avid analyst and investigator and historian on a lot of these items of interest, and we will pick up the triangles, the territory. Everyone, you're listening to the Task Force Griffin on kgrradio.com, part of this radio network, and we'll pick you up after these commercials.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to
That's not true. It's inaccurate. It was sparsely settled.
Right, and a lot of Vermont, wasn't what it is today, Vermont. So a lot of times when you hear the definitions of boundaries that people are set, New York extended much further east. New Hampshire, as an area, had different lines than what they were settled out as states. So that confuses the record a little bit.
Good point. Very good point.
So it's always been a low population area, and in the lore, legend, and oral histories, this place pops up amongst all the cultures that have been involved as a place of interest. Is that a nice way to phrase it?
That's a great way to phrase it, and that's what makes it so interesting. Is it's not just a matter of one culture in one period of time found this to be an odd place just for a number of years. It goes over a large period of time with these gaps in between where make nothing happen. But then something does happen. What does happen is very odd.
New Hampshire, as an area, had different lines than what they were settled on as states. So Steve, you also said that we have a similar type situation. Another one of these triangles a little bit further to the east and south, which would be in the Bridgewater area. Is that correct?
Bridgewater, Massachusetts. I haven't done much research about this.
And what forms this place pops up?
It's around the town of Bridgewater, which is southeast of Boston.
Is that a good nice way to phrase
I haven't done a lot of research on it, so I don't feel like I'm ready to talk about it yet. It's not just, you know that part of the state or the time travel is pretty thickly settled here. It goes over a little bit to the south to be a southern block, we would say, but I think there are tons of towns, tons of people, lots of cars, lots of traffic. This is not a remote area like southern Vermont.
Right. Another one of these triangles, which we look forward to the update on that. That's another one of those places that you wonder. One of the things I also find very interesting, a lot of times when these things come up, and I don't know that part of Vermont very well, but I do know that these areas tended to be places where you would have your sanitariums, or when tuberculosis was being cared for, many of your mental hospitals would be in these areas. And in the case of Bridgewater, there was a very famous facility there. And you have, I'd be interested to see if this is another driving point, another intersection point under the discussion of the triangles. Speaking of triangles, as you know, we're going to spend a few minutes on one of my favorite topics. I prepared you a little bit on that. It's interesting because a lot of the discussion that you have just talked about, these areas tend to be brought up where you would have a number of tuberculosis was intersecting a lot of overlap amongst the areas. Many of your mental. I'm convinced that there's two famous areas happening in the triangle aircraft. In the case of Bridgewater, that they're taking a couple of there. I believe we have two aircraft that have that same I'd be interested to see if this is another driving. I believe another intersection is the follow-on aircraft or the SR-71. Speaking of triangles, it's at least two. As you know, one is somewhat of my favorite topic. It's PowerPoint. Something like D2. It's interesting because there's a lot of a smaller discussion you have just talked about. Designed to deep down where as well as another incredible the other maybe technology, but I am going to say that it may be a major departure from the normal or the traditional burning of fuel to make thrust, and it may account for the reason that it's able, these large aircraft are seen hovering, they're seen silent, and then moving very quickly. Now, I have been spending a lot of time working the UFO Reporting Center's index just on triangle-shaped aircraft. and body positions. And a lot of this stuff tends to show up in an area not too far from where I am living in Maine, over into your general area, and then working up into Michigan, and then working out across the west to the Plain States, and then down into places like Utah and Nevada. I'd like some of your thoughts and takes on what you think the triangle aircraft might be.
Triangle aircraft, indeed it's aircraft. Sorry, I don't think it's a UFO either, folks. I think it could be an advanced aircraft, maybe the Aurora project, although there are certainly some arguments to debunk that, but an advanced aircraft of some type by the U.S. military. I don't think it's Russian or some other nationality. Another possibility is it could be a type of a drone called a tricopter. I was on YouTube earlier tonight, and there was a video of a triangular UAV, small in shape, that someone had mounted LED lights on. And it's not an exact triangle, but the stealth bomber is not really an exact triangle either. We're talking about something that's triangular.
Right.
So it could be a drone. Seems less likely given the number of sightings and the geographic dispersion. What interests me about the ones here in Maine and also in Rochester, New Hampshire is what are the military installations nearby? That's what I always look at first. Pease Air Force Base in Portsmouth used to be a Strategic Air Command base. I think B-2s may have been based there at one time, although I'm still looking for evidence about that.
Well, they were not based here permanently ever in this part. Your B-2s are pretty much Whiteman Air Force Base. There's a base out in the west, and then, of course, there are 4 deployment bases in the Pacific.
Sure.
And so that there hasn't been a lot of activity for the B-2 to be based here, but that doesn't mean that they're not able to use it. And Pease keeps coming up on a fairly common basis because of its long runway. It's a large facility. It's basically a guard base now, Air Force Reserve and guard base. But they still have a complement of support there. Aircraft coming back and forth from Iraq, Afghanistan, and Europe routinely stop there.
Sure. The other possibility in terms of air bases or something worth discussing is in Bangor, Maine, is the home of the 101st Air Refueling Wing. Now, this seems an unlikely place for an advanced aircraft, which we would assume wouldn't be refueling to be showing up so much, but we can't discount that either. And in fact, in Maine, one of the places that you are most likely to see a UFO is in the city of Bangor itself.
Right.
And that may be because of the international airport. It could be because of this air refueling wing station. But even though it's a settled area, there are plenty of sightings.
There is on the 16th of this month, there was a triangle aircraft seen for 2 minutes in Bangor, just on the latest, in the last reports. So now, obviously, not every report that comes out, and if you look at the summaries on them, you'll find, I think, ample room. The ones that you talked about in Rochester caught my attention because the way they were reported was they were seen at night, they were silent, but the way that was reported was they were there for a long time, like they were holding some kind of orbit as they were flying around. But you could detect them because they were blocking out the starlight behind them or above them. And that's not that's a carefully crafted tale. It's a well-crafted tale. As opposed to someone saying, I saw a boomerang-style aircraft, and it was flying around, and I saw it, for only a couple seconds. Not that I'm taking anything away from a report, but when I start to see a length of time going over a minute, and I get a description of what person's flying, from my pilot perspective, I try to figure out, okay, what's happening, or what could possibly be the reason for this to go on. And those areas, and since I do a lot of work in this particular part of the country for flying, it makes sense if you're going to do things like practice training, run missions, work in the Appalachian Mountains, and then be able to get back to a spot that can recover you quickly, it makes sense that it would happen. And I've had some very off the normal track conversations that most of the audience has heard. The gentleman that made up the T-shirts heard my description one night on one of the programs, and we were talking, and he started to draw what he had seen and explain what he had seen, and I popped up some pictures of the artist's conception of what the Aurora, that would be the nuclear drive that as was theorized to be, why it has the power to do what it does. And his picture looked very close to one of the drawings, one of the engineering drawings that have been circulated. I can't tell you that he hasn't seen it before and he did it. I know the man well, so I don't think that was his desire. And he has no desire to come on and talk about anything. He was more happy to explain it to me, but he didn't feel like he needed to bring the ire of anybody on top. He knows what he had seen, and he knows it was something. He's not sure what it was. He has his guess. But I think what we may be approaching is a time that's coming of age where this may be released. And if you look back at the history of the U-2 and its other name, the TR-1, interesting story behind that, why they called it TR-1 for a while, and the SR-71, which was supposed to be actually the RS-71. But then President Johnson got the letters reversed, and no one was going to tell him he was wrong, so he actually changed the name, the official name, to SR-71 by mistake in a speech that he made. And it was flying for a long time before it was revealed that it was a operable aircraft.
Let me toss this out there. If you think back in time to 1980 at the Rendlesham Air Force Base in the UK, that I believe was a triangle-shaped aerial craft as well.
Right.
So we're talking a number of years ago. Does that seem like it?
Well, I'm going to tell you that the way things happened in Desert Storm and the way that our strikes were hitting with the accuracy they were, I'm convinced, and I'm not the only one that holds this theory. I have no proof. I was there, but I wasn't in any capacity to know the answer. So obviously, I couldn't give this any more validity. But I was flying airplanes and helicopters. I was exchange duty with the Navy. The accuracy that we were hitting targets leads me to believe that we had an aircraft that was overhead, that was giving very precise intelligence coordinate data, much more than what we had at that time. GPS was just coming online, and we had a very strong desire to use lasers as the guidance capability. It makes me think that we had something else early on that was flying that was most likely not easily detected. So it had low observable technology that was going on, which was the whole crux of basically the stealth fighter, and that capability was the final blow that brought the Soviet Union down, because we were able to prove that we could penetrate a very strong radar defense system with that capability. And it worked very, very well. But it was better than just F-117s flying, in my opinion. And that something else was restaging. And I don't think it was done by satellite, and I don't think it was done by normal, or I would say more conventionally configured reconnaissance aircraft. There was something else that could tactically move in that air, set those coordinates up. The desert is a great place for this kind of work because the air is generally very cooperative. So I think there is very strong evidence that this aircraft has been around for a while, or variations of it. And I do remember, must have been about 20, 25 years ago, I think it was Mr. Sweetman, who was known as one of the experts for breaking a lot of the technology. There was a theory that there may actually have been a lighter than air aircraft as well that was part of this. And I don't for a second think that they wouldn't try anything to do that. We've had many airship type applications, or hybrid airship type applications that have been tried over the years, but I don't think it would provide the speed that would be necessary for that to be a long-term running thing. I can see if we're getting into an area, but I don't see how that would work out real well. So, yeah, I think that what you talked about, Steve, they're seeing it in Britain, and Britain, Scotland is always a big jump-off point for a lot of the aircraft that we use for reconnaissance work, all kinds of reconnaissance work. So it's easy for me to think that we have it and have something like this flying, and it'll be interesting how long it takes before a more disclosure comes to the forefront.
Makes good sense, and given the situation in the world with some of the reconnaissance flights, if we can call them that, but the Russians have been flying, we would be well served to make sure we're ready.
Well, I guess the final happy piece of news is it seems that our nuclear sabers seem to be rattling just a tiny bit as of late. Have you been tracking these small little items this past week?
I've been tracking them on two fronts, of course. We know about the Russians and their massive civil defense drill.
Right.
There was also
quote-unquote millions were involved?
Yes, supposedly so. Harkening back to the old Soviet days. My understanding of Soviet nuclear doctrine is that they plan to survive, at least the leadership plans to survive, and so maybe this is just a show. Probably is. Nuclear war is not winnable on a massive scale, but they did it. And then in China, a very high defense official has instructed that people are given a statement to prepare for nuclear war because of that country's efforts to build the artificial islands in the ocean, and the U.S.'s assertion, and properly so, that it's a violation of the international shipping lanes.
Right.
So on two fronts, we have adversaries, I'm going to call them that because that's how I see them, that are rattling their sabers, and we don't seem to be rattling ours.
Well, we did have a very public report this past week, though, of B-2s going in and dropping their practice shapes, their nuke shapes in Nevada, which I find interesting that would make the news. I mean, we have the B-1s flying, showing the flag with North and South Korea. So that doesn't surprise me that we would have that kind of information come out. But the way this whole thing played, I'm just not quite sure what we were achieving by talking about the B-2s dropping their practice shapes. But it does cause one to wonder what is next. Is this just all part of the hype that's leading into our November? Is this some global trick or treat, so to speak? Or is it just another one of those things have degraded, and hopefully inevitably we'll come back around to a better understanding? It's got my attention, and obviously it has yours.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the next 4 months will be interesting, if we can use that word. I'm afraid they could be dangerous. There's a great historian and contemporary observer. His name is Victor David Hansen. He's a classicist. So this is a guy that goes back and studies everything from the ancient Greeks until the modern day. And I remember in January of last year, he said that 2016 had the potential to be very dangerous because our adversaries perceive the United States as being unwilling to fight. So these next months will be perhaps dangerous times. Let's hope not. Let's hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I share some of Mr. Hansen's and your concerns, and that also brings up an interesting part. We have quite a few folks that are redeploying into Iraq as well as we speak. So, yep, we do live in dangerous times, no doubt about that. So to make sure we recap properly here, we talked about clowns, which led us into our areas of the mysterious triangles in New England, and probably more to be found, which led us to triangle aircraft, and now we end up on the happy notes of nuclear saber rattling. Excellent. What a cheery evening it's been with you and I, Steve. I can't imagine why people just don't pound up and want us more and more.
More and more. There must be something about the size of the aircraft and the three world powers that are all rattling their swords. There really must be something magical about the number 3, thinking back to the Middle Ages.
Must be. I did have one remark that I wanted to go back to. I didn't get a chance to do a really good job of bringing this in. I'm working backwards on my notes here. Give me 1 second as I slide backwards. What's the next big project work-wise and on your own that you've got coming up that we can look to see in the not too distant future to come back on and talk?
Well, I think if the show is interested in the Bridgewater Triangle and or any other triangular areas of interest, I'd like to do some research into them. I think it would be great. I am predicting that this crazy clown thing is going to blow over shortly after the election day, if not after Halloween. But maybe we can talk about that again. I find it fascinating, not because of people running around like idiots scaring other people, but what it all means. And then work-wise, I am doing a lot of writing about manufacturing technologies and doing all I can where I sit and support Made in the USA manufacturing.
Very, very good. Well, I think it's a noble cause on anything that's made in the U.S. I'd love to see our capability to step back up. So here's the point that I want to close our last couple minutes out here. And I definitely got to give Jamie his time. So I'll pose this more as a question from one of our listeners, Blue Orb. Has the public been prepared psychologically to the point when an unrelated stimulus can cause a big scare? What do you think? Do you think that this is, and I'm going to go one step further because I'm the conspiracy guy, do you think it's done on purpose? Do you think that we run these things to the point that they are now as almost a diversion or a deception type technique?
I've heard that theory too, and it does seem plausible.
I agree.
Because the similarities between the clown scare and terrorism, if you think about lone wolf terrorists and self-radicalization, and also some of the unrest in the inner city, which is really about anarchism, perhaps the clown craze is a distraction from these things, and if so, it's a pretty darn effective one.
And I'm willing to poke a little bit further and say I think it might be on the point of being intentional or planned or harnessed. You know, that this thing started out on its own, but you have certain agents, quote unquote, of chaos that are pushing it forward.
Right.
All right. Well, folks, many thanks to Steve Melito for his time with us tonight. A big hearty welcome back to Jamie. Thank you, Jamie, for jumping up and doing the show tonight, and all the folks that come in and make the show worthwhile doing through the chat room. Don't forget, Task Force Griffin, pgra@gmail.com. Comments, suggestions, and supporting information is always appreciated at the email. And I look forward to talking to you guys very soon. Jamie, take her away, bud.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week she asked her for Chinese, and guess what? Egg roll showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, Doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slows circulation.
Taking Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Van Buren, Arkansas. Sarasota, Florida.
Stand by. We're going live. Worldwide. This is the Jamie Hamakin Show with your host, Jamie Hamakin.
All right, welcome to the Jamie Hamakin Show. Thank you guys for joining us. And as you may know, tonight's show we had scheduled, and we had said we were going to take off until November 6th, I believe. But Mr. William Puckett, I booked him, so Bill was not, he didn't get the email and the notice. So I decided to go ahead and go forward with an hour show with Mr. Bill Puckett tonight, because he's such a valuable resource in this field of ufology, his research, what he provides. And we're going to talk a lot tonight about the case that has to deal with Pat Daniels. He hosts Friends Radio, and we're going to talk about that and more. And you know what? My co-host Bill just said he wants to join the call, which I'm glad that he does. Bill, I'll tell him to call me and I'll add him in. I'm glad he's going to join us. So, Bill, I've interviewed you probably 6 or 7 times over the years. Before we get to this case, well, let's talk about the case. How did you first hear about this case? Was it submitted to you? Was it submitted to MUFON?
This particular case was submitted to MUFON, to the Idaho State Director at the time, Eric Lukes, who subsequently has left MUFON, which director at the time, called me about it and mentioned that Pat Daniels, whom I also know, I've been on it before too, although I didn't remember that at the time. It took me a while to recall his name. To make a long story short, Pat Daniels is a ham radio operator. Overheard this conversation of an airline pilot saw some really strange-looking lights out ahead of him. Called FAA on radio, asking if they had it on radar, and the FAA responded no. And then there was some further conversation, and then Pat notified Erica, and Erica called me because she knew I had some radar expertise and said it was worth get in the radar data? And I said, sure, I'll write a Freedom of Information request.
Yeah.
But at the particular time, we did not know what airline it was, and we got on the FAA's site. They retain FAA audio recordings, communications between local traffic control and air route traffic control.
Yeah, I'd like to play that in a few minutes when you're
For
done.
30 days, and so we got on there. We finally found out what airplane it was. It was a American Airlines flight. I don't specifically call the number. I'll have to look on my report here. That was en route from San Francisco to Philadelphia. And so once we nailed the flight, I gathered some other information, wrote a Freedom of Information request for radar data and for audio tapes also. And we did get all that information from the FAA. Unfortunately, there was a couple conversations, and I am pretty convinced that the first conversation where the FAA radio back said they did not have the object on radar was redacted in the FOIA request. Why, I do not know. The rest of the second conversation was on there. And so that's, why they decided to do that, I have no idea. But the point of it is we'll get to that in a bit, about what the information showed, the radar, but it definitely showed a concentration of returns right in the area where the pilot.
It's amazing how in depth you can now get these days with with radar data, and you can pull the audio information. I'd like to play that here and let people hear it as it was played out live. Before I do, I'd like to welcome my co-host Bill Forte to the show. How you doing, Bill?
Hey, Jamie, and hello. Good evening, Bill.
Hi, Bill also.
Before you play that audio, it's interesting because Pat Daniels, who happens to be a friend of mine, he told me about this, and believe it or not, I was the one who told Erica about this, and that's how the whole process started. But
really? Well, I learn more every day.
But you know what's interesting about this audio? Because Pat actually told me the site where the audio was first initially located. I can't recall the site exactly, but they keep it on their database, I think, for 30 days or 90 days. Right. But he also told me that even after you had done the FOIA requests of even the audio, that it seems that was redacted. There was missing segments of the conversation that took place that Jamie's about to play. That's what he says he recalls when he was listening to it in real time after midnight on January 12th, I think it was, that even after he heard the audio that was released, there was still some segments missing. So maybe you can talk about that after Jamie plays the little clip.
All right, so let me hit play. I'm going to have to turn on my volume mixer here. Let's see.
434, go ahead. Good afternoon, this is Frank. Orange Square is replying over with you. No, that's a good question. I'm not sure. Is it off your right side? It's like strictly off our nose right now, like right below us. So I've been watching it for a while. It's like down what it is. It's a perfect square, and it's bright orange. What counter we next to? It's down right off our 2 o'clock low. Back to 434, that is Nephi, Utah. Nephi, okay, cool. Now, see what I go find. Thank you. You bet.
All right. So that was the pilot saying that he's basically saying that he sees something that he cannot identify.
Okay, I did not hear the audio on this.
Yeah.
You guys didn't hear that? Okay. Bill, can you play it on your end?
Can you send me the file?
I can send you the link.
Okay, yeah, send me the link.
Okay. Yeah, there's something weird with this new audio interface. You guys didn't hear nothing there.
No, I didn't hear anything. No.
That's crazy. I gotta fix that. All right, here, Bill. Here's the link. Go ahead, and I'm glad you joined because we wouldn't be able to hear this. Sorry,
Not
for
a-
those of you out there, I thought you guys were able to hear me. So go ahead
Okay,
and
I will.
read it through.
Let's see if I can get it to play through my set here. I'm just trying to coordinate my settings on my audio.
And while you're doing that, I'll talk a little bit more about
Yes,
about this. There's also an animation of the aviation radar returns, which is amazing. There's also audio trace FAA airline conversations, and it's a visual trace of the audio file, likely, which is said to have been redacted to this day. Pat says that there's a lot missing from what's been released to what he heard. So it's incredible how radar data returns, how you can see the object. And Bill, your background is in what, meteorology? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I'm a meteorologist, actually a retired meteorologist. I was a weather forecaster for 5 years.
I didn't mean to interrupt Bill and Davey, but I do have that audio now.
All right, go
Okay.
ahead.
American 434, that is Nephi, Utah.
Nephi, okay, cool. Now, see what I go find. Thank you.
You bet.
Do you want me to repeat it?
No, we were able to hear that quite well. Now, play the one you're not on the side. I'm going to give it an actual link to it, because below that is the, let's see what this one is. It is an animation. I don't know if there's any audio in here. Let's see.
Okay.
No, there's no audio in the second one. So that's basically all that was captured. Is that correct, Bill?
Actually, no, that's not right. That's assuming that I heard all of the audio. No, there was two.
Oh, I see another one. Pat
Conversations.
Daniels describes the airline with the FAA too. Play that.
Yep.
Send me the link.
Yep, I am. This here. There it is. And sorry for those of you out there listening. This show is like throwing up last minute, but this is an amazing case, and we're going to talk about other cases as well. With this case here, I believe it's the first time somebody's actually captured, an airline pilot's audio and had radar data in the back.
All right, let me see if I can play it. So far, it's not coming through my system. Okay.
American 434, go ahead.
Does it happen to know this bright orange squares are flying over with you?
No, that's a good question. I'm not sure. Is it off your right side?
It's like directly off our nose right now, like right below us. I've been watching it for a while. It's like, I don't know what it is. It's a perfect square, and it's bright orange. What's the counter we have to do? This counter off our 2 o'clock low.
American 434, that is Nephi, Utah.
Nephi, okay, cool. Now, see what I go find. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, that was the file.
Yeah, that's what we got from the FAA. Now, there were 2 segments of conversation that Pat Daniels heard. The first one, the crew radioed to the FAA, and apparently they didn't identify themselves, from what I understand. And then the FAA radioed back, and they asked for radar confirmation. And once the FAA knew who they were, they asked them to identify themselves. They said, no, it wasn't on radar. That segment was redacted in the data that I got from the FAA. And people can follow along on a website. That particular case is on my...
I put the link in the chat room. I'll put the link back in the chat room one more time.
Okay.
Put it into...
And if they page down a bit...
That's the one I wanted you to listen to, Bill. If you went to that link and page down to where you see Pat Daniels describes conversation of airline crew with FAA. Scroll down quite a bit.
That's what I'm doing now.
Yep. And if anybody out there in the chat room has any information or questions about this case, go ahead and post them and we'll get them to Bill.
The Erica Luke's interview with Pat Daniels?
No, Pat Daniels describes.
All right, it must be down more, or?
Yeah, let me see.
But you know what's interesting? A lot of these pilots must have sightings. They do see things. And obviously, due to their job status, or when they retire, they're worried about their pensions. And I'm sure someone even threatened that they'll be fired immediately if they even come out with anything. So it's unfortunate that this pilot couldn't be tracked down, a flight 434, and maybe he would come forward. Maybe in time he will, but that would really be something that would give more light to maybe some of the stuff that was going on that we are not aware of, that was redacted and taken out. Even though Bill went through all his intense research and he did a lot of work on this. He did an extensive investigation.
Let me ask this while you're pulling up that clip I just put in Skype. Were there any ground witnesses?
Not that we know of. And Erica did send her, Jeff, I don't remember his last name, went down there, took some photos of the area, interviewed some people. They do see a lot of unusual stuff down there. But understand, this is midnight on a weekday, January 14th, 2016. Not many people are going to be outside looking at the sky.
True.
And this wasn't in Nephi. This was southwest of Nephi, about 7 miles.